You're listening to another episode of the Turn Autism Around podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Barbera, and I am thrilled that you're here. I have a special interview today with a mom, Michele C from Michigan. And Michele is in my online courses and community only since February of 2020, when her firstborn daughter was diagnosed with autism around the age of 2. At that point, she had a standardized speech evaluation, which showed that she was functioning at a 0 to 3 month old baby level for expressive language. And within 3 months of working with, only within my online courses, her daughter is now saying hundreds, over 500 words. She's putting words together. And her most recent speech evaluation showed that she was not only caught up, but at a 30-month-old level for expressive language. So within 3 months, she's made this remarkable transformation. So today I am interviewing Michele C about her daughter's regression, her diagnosis of autism, and the miraculous progress she's made using the Turn Autism Around strategy. So help me welcome Michele C. So the way I like to start is describe your fall into the autism world.
Yep, absolutely. At Elena's 18-month appointment, she had 3 words. She didn't have 6 words. They were like, well, technically she's delayed. I would recommend early on services because she only has 3 words. The minimum that she should have right now is 6. And I said, she'll catch up. Stop trying to cram all kids into this little milestone box. I thought, in my head, I just thought that it wasn't a big deal. I thought she would catch up. And it was my husband actually who said, please, we should get her early on tested. We should get her in these early on services because, speech is important. And I said, I know it is, but I know she'll catch up. I know tons of children who didn't start talking till 2.5 and they're perfectly fine, now. And so I blew it off and I shouldn't have. I have a
And what is your husband's background and what was your background?
And that's the really embarrassing part. My husband is a police officer and I'm a teacher. So I'm a high school teacher. I teach history. So that was the embarrassing part, is that I should have known better, but I had the mom blinders on and I thought she would catch up. I said, she's so smart. She could point out every letter of the alphabet. At 18 months, she was just she picked up things so quick. She just didn't utter a word. So I just thought, well, she's learning. So, if she was just completely mute, or just completely unresponsive, then maybe I would have been more concerned. But she...
And at that point, was anybody saying autism, or were you thinking anything about autism at that point?
At 18 months, no, we weren't. We were a little concerned about her toe walking. She walked on her toes a lot. My pediatrician actually was not concerned about that aspect of it at all. She was more concerned about her speech and the fact that she didn't have any. And I was more concerned about, the fact that she was toe walking, because she would curl her toes completely under and walk on those toes. So I was just like, wow, what's happening here? But the speech thing, I never really was concerned about. And I never thought autism. That word never crossed my mind. My husband brought it up. So kind of like your story a little bit, your husband brought it up to you. And I was like, what? I said, no way. I've had autistic students before and she's not that. But around Christmas time, she was 22 months old. And that was around the birth of my second daughter, who is now 5 months old. And Elena started to develop some stimming habits, and there was still no language. She was 22 months old, and she didn't utter a word. She didn't have any language at all. And we started noticing a steep decline. She wouldn't look at you. She wouldn't point. She didn't respond to her name at all. And her attention span was nothing. She didn't stay with an activity for very long. She was very addicted to the screen. She watched a show called Little Baby Bum, and she never wanted to watch a different show, just the same shows. And honestly, like, she had her favorite episodes, and that's all she wanted to watch. And, and she's always been so socially anxious too. So at that point, we started to think, maybe we should just bring her around other kids more. She'll forget about this show. She'll talk maybe because, maybe she just needs more friends, and that way the language will come out. And I took her to a family gathering, and it became blatantly obvious when the other children who were about her age, there was just such a huge social emotional difference. And, they were talking, and Elena had a complete and utter meltdown at this place. And by meltdown, I mean, it wasn't a sensory meltdown, I don't think, but it could have been some sensory issues, but I think it was mostly, I took my phone away because I didn't want her to watch videos at this family gathering. I wanted her to go play with the other kids. And she got so upset when I took that phone away. She was covered in scratches, like laying on the restaurant floor, just screaming, kicking her shoes off. It was, at that point I was like, I need to get her evaluated. I was wrong. Something is happening here that isn't right. And it was just such a crushing day. It was January 12th of this year. I'll remember the date forever that I realized something, that she had something going on. And sure enough, a couple days later, we took her to her pediatrician, and her pediatrician said, I think this is autism. I'm very worried. I think she has really severe developmental delays. And, she was in a very bad state a few months ago before I took your course. And my family doesn't even recognize her now. So in a bad way.
Yeah. So it was the same pediatrician that saw her basically on around January 12th, that saw her at the 18-month visit. But it sounds like she also regressed.
Yes.
Was there any blame on, it sounds very similar to my story, because I had Spencer, and then all of a sudden he didn't react to the baby at all. And, he wanted to watch a lot of TV, and he became addicted to his pacifier. And then some people would say, well, it's the new baby and you're not giving him enough attention, and it's winter time, and the whole, you can try to spin it any which way, and it's confusing.
It is. My daughter was also very addicted to her pacifier. I managed to wean her off of it myself at 20 months, when she was 20 months old. But before that, she had to have it all the time. She did not want to give it up, and she always struggled at social gatherings. Always. Whenever there's other adult attention on her, even now, that's still my really big struggle with her. We were able to work on so many things, but socially she was always a struggle. The passy was something she was very addicted to until I weaned her off at 20 months. And that was like a 3-week process for me. It took a while. But
were you working full-time as a teacher, or were you off at this point?
I was working part-time last year. I was part-time, and she, I was with her for the afternoon, because my husband works the opposite shift that I do. So Elena was always only with one parent.
I think that sometimes, another similarity is both of it was our firstborn. So we're like, well, maybe this is just a phase, and then I'm pregnant, and then I have the baby. And then also not being enrolled in daycare or preschool, it makes it more obvious sooner, because the preschool or daycares have checklists. And if your child is not playing, or not drinking out of an open cup, or not following directions in circle time, not able to move to the classroom B of the 3-year-olds or the 2-year-olds, it kind of, I think developmental delays get flagged sooner in most cases, especially if it's significant delays. But you can see, and I talk about this a lot. I did video blog and a podcast on autism regression. And in Lucas's case, he regressed as well. And it makes it super confusing because 18 months ago, the pediatrician was just worried that she had 3 words. Then all of a sudden, now she doesn't have 3 words anymore, or you can't get them out. And now she's having severe tantrums and she has, social issues and it can get very confusing. Okay. Yeah. So how did you get her diagnosed so quickly at 2 years of age?
I was lucky in that regard. My mother-in-law, my husband's mother, well, I should say my husband's brother has cerebral palsy. So my husband's mother has connections with all of these doctors and all of these parents with children with disabilities because, she established those relationships throughout my husband's brother's life. So so my mother-in-law was able to connect me with a pediatric neurologist in Detroit, closer to me. And he couldn't see me until this month originally, but then, my mother-in-law kind of begged him because she knew him personally. She said, please see my granddaughter. She has something going on. They need help now. Our insurance didn't cover ABA services unless we had a full diagnosis. So we saw a pediatric neurologist on February 14th, and he said, I would diagnose her with provisional autism, right? Like a provisional diagnosis of autism. But because you need services right now, I will give you that full diagnosis. I'm comfortable enough with what I'm seeing to give you a diagnosis of autism. Because at that point, Elena still didn't have any words at all. And she was very, very stimmy in the office. Fortunately, she didn't cry in that office. Which is very new. At a medical clinic, she's normally just a complete crying mess at medical clinics. But she was actually quite happy, but in her happiness, she was anxious still, and she was very stimmy, feeling the walls, feeling his pants, very observant of everything, but just didn't act like a regular neurotypical 2-year-old. And, so he was comfortable enough with what he saw to diagnose her with autism. He said, though, the first thing he noticed was a language disorder, is what he noticed first. And that terrified me. I thought I was never going to hear a word out of her mouth. I thought she would never speak again. She
was right around the age of 2 at this point, right?
Yeah,
and this is just in February of 2020. So, so then as the world shut down, right after the diagnosis, the ABA treatment that you were standing in line for suddenly disappeared, right?
Yes, it did. I spent the entire month of February on the phone trying to organize care for Elena, and little by little, each institution called me and shut it down. They canceled her speech, her OT, ABA therapy. She was within 2 weeks of getting in clinic for ABA therapy, and that was put on hold. So I was just crushed. I felt like, and I still feel like sometimes the world is just against my poor child, but then I found your course, and I truly, and I might start crying. I never thought she would speak to me at all. I heard that language disorder, and I thought I would never hear her say anything with meaning. She said mom, but if I asked her who I was, she couldn't tell me. The pediatrician would ask where we were, and like, where's mommy, where's daddy? And she didn't point to us. She would look at us, but she didn't point. I just didn't know what the future held for her, and I still don't. And that part's very hard. But now I know she has language capabilities. She's tongue-tied, but a lot of her language is understandable by strangers. And she was,
So she is tongue-tied? Did you get her tongue clipped?
I did not. In fact, I took her for an audiological assessment recently for her hearing, and the doctor there is the one who told me when he looked in her mouth, he said she's actually a little tongue-tied, and I didn't know that until that day, and that was just a couple weeks ago. So I I also read that they can grow out of this a little bit, but I will look into that. I'll look into.
Yeah, I just did a podcast number 71 with Dr. Melissa Olive, who's a behavior analyst. And we talked a little bit about tongue ties.
Okay.
And so you want to listen to that one.
Okay.
But also, I do have quite a few friends who really do believe that that doctors in general should be a lot more aggressive about clipping tongue ties as early as they're found. And some kids, like your daughter, it's found a little bit later, but
Yeah.
it could affect sucking and talking and moving food around your mouth. And
Sure.
the fact that she's talking is a great sign, but
Yeah.
if she has some kind of physical thing, I would just encourage you to do a little bit more research. And in fact, one of my friends who's a behavior analyst in the UK, she's an expert on tongue ties actually. And she just had a new baby and she assessed the baby and saw that he was tongue tied and had to go through 3 traditional doctors before she found somebody to clip him
Oh my
before
God.
they were discharged. So she even is an expert, and it still took a lot of convincing. So I am not an expert at all, but when I hear tongue tie now, I'm like, oh wait, I
Yeah.
would look into that a little bit more. So anybody listening, marybarbera.com/71, we can put it in the show notes too. Just look into tongue ties a little bit more. Okay, so when you found my course, you just found a Facebook ad, right?
I did.
And then you attended a workshop, an online workshop, and then you decided to enroll in the toddler preschooler course. Was that scary for you? Was it this sounds too good to be true, or were you just like, you know what, it can't hurt? I guess with the COVID shutdown too, you were kind of in a panic.
Yes, I did look at your ad and I thought, I didn't think it was too good to be true for other kids, but you're always so scared for your own kid. I thought, well, my daughter has this language disorder. I was told that she might not ever speak. And so it might be a waste of time and money, but I'm going to try. I didn't even tell my husband because I'm not working right now. And I said, I'll beg for his forgiveness later to pay for this course. But it was worth every single penny, but I would have paid tenfold for the results that I got with my daughter.
Okay. So in the course, and a lot of my listeners are parents and professionals, they've never attended a webinar. You can attend a webinar. Actually, the best way to attend a webinar right now is just to take a 2-minute quiz. So you get to the right webinar, because I have different webinars and different offerings. So marybarbera.com/quiz will get you to a quiz, which will get you to a free workshop, and you'll find out information you can use for free. And then you'll also find out about and given an opportunity to join my online course and community. So at that point, your daughter, I think you said, had 2 words when you started?
Yeah, she said mom and dog. But if you asked her where the dog was, she couldn't show me where the dog was. If I asked her who I was, because I'm mom, she couldn't point to me or tell me who I was.
So these were words that she didn't really have a ton of meaning.
Yeah, just not a lot of meaning.
So for people that don't know anything about my course, is basically you just enroll and then you watch videos and you do homework that you keep yourself. You don't turn in the homework or check it, but the homework actually helps you keep track of your progress so that you can see, okay, a 1-page assessment, she does this, she does that, she doesn't have any language, she melts down. How many times a day was she having tantrums or problem behaviors? A lot
You
at
know
that
what?
point in the beginning?
In the beginning, I would say at least once a day, she would have a tantrum, but it did not always include self-injurious behavior. When it was very bad, like at this family function, there was self-injurious behavior. She would scratch herself. She would scratch her neck, her back, and she would be bleeding from this behavior. It was really terrifying to see. But I would say it was once a week she'd have a violent tantrum like that, and I would say probably about once a day she would have one tantrum, like one good tantrum. And throughout the day there's intermittent bouts of whining and crying for things, because that was how she manded. She had a speech evaluation on February 2nd of this year. And that speech evaluation put her at a 0 to 3 month level for expressive language. So she
Wow. Zero. So she was 2 years old and the
yeah,
speech, the standardized speech testing was showing her 0 to 3 months of age,
yes.
right before you started my course, right when she was diagnosed, basically. Wow. That's really, okay. So then you started implementing the strategies in the course, which include like a shoebox program and potato head and inset puzzles and infant toys. And it sounds like she responded really well and really quickly.
She did. She loved the novelty of the table. So I had that benefit for me. She didn't hate the table from the beginning. However, her attention was poor in the beginning. I really had to figure out reinforcements, learn what she liked, how I can alternate them to keep her entertained and to keep her happy with these more and more increasingly difficult tasks. But in the beginning, the materials that you have in your checklist are really just reinforcers themselves in a lot of ways. At least for my daughter, she really enjoyed all of those materials right from the start. She enjoyed them. I thought that I was going to have to buy a bunch of new fun toys to get her at the table. And I really didn't. Your materials were reinforcing in themselves, especially the shoebox and the whitey box. Just incorporating the memory game pieces in those boxes and letting her put them in. She loves that. She loves the sound of bears, counting bears in a cup. All of the suggestions from your toddler course made table time really easy to start, to be honest. I thought Elena wouldn't sit at the table for even 1 minute. I didn't think she would sit down at all. I thought she would just wander away. But table time is something she runs to now. As soon as we're done with breakfast at the table, she runs to the table and she yells table time. And if I bring flashcards elsewhere in the house, in any capacity, she looks at them and she goes, table time cards, and she runs next to me on the couch and sits with me. And
wow. So she's actually putting words together. She's saying
yeah.
table time cards and table time. So in 6 weeks, you said that she went from 2 words that were sporadic to over 500 words.
Yes, that's correct.
Which when I saw that, I was like, wow, I have to interview Michele about these gains, because we do get comments in our online community pretty much every day to show that kids are making gains, but that is really a big jump in gains in 6 weeks. That was pretty, it was amazing. It was great. And some of it is once you get echoic control, once you say ball and the child says ball, or you say table time and the child echoes table time, then that's the way typically developing kids learn language, and the floodgates a lot of times open when the child starts to echo, especially multiple length words and phrases and that sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely. I think I posted it on your Facebook group page, but she recently had another speech evaluation, just a couple, I want to say like last week. She had another speech evaluation and her expressive language level went from 0 to 3 months on February 6th of this year to a 30-month range, and she's 26 months old. So now her expressive language is 30 months right now.
In early May, is that accurate?
It was early May. I want to say May 4th or something like that. So it was.
So only 3 months, and 3 months since you've been taking my courses, and she hasn't even had professional help because of the COVID shutdown, or did she have a little help? No help, just you teaching her.
The funny thing is, she did have speech therapy for 5 weeks and occupational therapy as well, because she struggled with, open cup and spoon feeding. But I've been working on all of those things at home and with your course. And so she had speech therapy for about 5 weeks. And in that time, she learned to point. They gave me strategies to work on joint attention and pointing and learning some signs, because they said, Yeah, she's not talking. It's time to incorporate signs.
So she had speech therapy and occupational therapy before the diagnosis.
She did, but did not develop any new words or skills
Yeah.
or any new skills to speak of at all with her occupational or speech therapy. And these are very nice people. They were very nice therapists. It just wasn't working. And I asked them, I said, give me homework, give me things to do. What can I do at home? And I did everything they said, but it just wasn't what I needed. It wasn't what she needed to gain the skills that I learned from your course.
Wow. Well, I mean, to go on a standardized speech test from 0 to 3 month language in February, and 3 months later in early May, going to a 30-month language for now a 26-month-old little girl is incredible. Having those standardized speech scores are even more validity to show that what you did in the past 3 months made incredible transformation for your daughter.
Oh, it really did. We even had, are you familiar with the term AAEC? I'm not sure if that's just a Michigan term or not, but they're actual diagnostic autism centers. And most insurance companies require your child to be diagnosed by one of these diagnostic centers for autism before they cover ABA services. I was fortunate in that Blue Cross Blue Shield accepted my pediatric neurologist diagnosis. But so there's only 15 locations in Michigan. So the wait list is humongous. I didn't expect to get in for 15 months or so. And I said, I can't wait that long for my child to receive services. I need a diagnosis now, or I need whatever I need to do to get her services. I need it now. And the AAEC, this was back in February when I wanted them to diagnose her as soon as possible. And they said, we can't right now. You have to wait in line. And I was crushed. And recently they called me during this COVID crisis. And they said, we would like to bring your daughter in for, a Zoom meeting for a diagnosis. And they said, have any changes occurred since January of this year when you called? And I said, yes. I said, a great deal of changes have occurred. And I explained it to them. And they said, whoa, okay, we don't want to do a Zoom conference meeting with you now. We want to wait to see her in person because this is not a clear-cut situation for us. We need to see her in person because, this isn't, they were kind of looking for, really, really severe cases that,
were just easy to check off and go, she's got a 0 to 3 month level of language. She's 24 months of age. She's not talking at all. She's toe walking. She meets all these criteria. Yep, here it goes. And that's what happens is these kids who get better then are really on the edge. Like in my webinar, I talk about a little boy who avoided the diagnosis after 4 months of treatment, and little Chino who made major gains after a year of treatment. And, had he been brought in for the first time at 3 instead of 2 with those skills, he wouldn't have been diagnosed. So, I think it's always good unless it's a really obvious case where I think that was smart of them to go like, hey, you have a child who's gone from a 3-month language age to a 30-month language age in 3 months with home therapy led by the parent only. It's probably just really wise that you just push off and wait a little bit.
That's what they said. And I have to tell you, COVID-19, I thought it was this horrible curse for my child. I thought the world was out to get her. I said, gosh, I can't, this poor girl is just not going to get the help she needs. And it was, your course has been such a blessing, especially with COVID, because I couldn't socialize her. I had to keep her home. And because of that, I spent 100% of my time with her, and I was able to incorporate these strategies, and I had time to take your course, and I signed up for the behavior bundle too. And I'm in the middle of that, of the early learner course right now. And it's been COVID was such a blessing in disguise in a way, because I found your course because I was desperately searching for a way I could help her, because I am not a professional in this field. I could tell you all about Louis the 14th, but I can't tell you, anything about autism. And now I feel very
Well,
comfortable.
now you can.
Yeah, I certainly can. I'm actually thinking about going back to school and becoming a BCBA, or even a behavior tech, where I can actually work with kids who have developmental disabilities. I'm actually very seriously leaning towards that route once I get Elena situated, once my daughters grow up a little bit, because my children are still very, very young. They're just babies. So I have to figure out what's going on with them. I have to figure out if my youngest daughter, Isla, is developmentally on track, and what's going on with her before I do that. But
Are you worried about your second daughter?
I can't help myself. I get worried. So far, she's meeting all of her developmental milestones. Her pediatrician isn't worried at all. And they said that she's doing very well. And she does some things that Elena, my oldest, the one who's diagnosed now, she does some things that Elena never did as a baby, even. So there's some pretty major differences in their behavior. And I know that I didn't look too much into that, because I know that babies have different personalities. But my youngest, she looks at me, and Elena was always so focused on stuff. She loved her toys. She looked at things, and she didn't necessarily want to look at people. And my Isla never wants to be left alone. My youngest baby, she doesn't like being alone. And Elena was perfectly content, batting her toys by herself and following things. And it's so funny, because I thought Elena was so advanced as a baby. She was always so physically strong, and she would track things. She was tracking objects at 2 weeks old, back and forth. I mean, she was just so sharp and on point with catching things, and with her eyes. And she was always so observant. And I thought she was so advanced. And it's just interesting how things, turn out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you caught the delays just in the nick of time. And now you are empowered and educated on, it's not as scary anymore, even with your baby, because if she has any delays, you're going to be right on it. You're going to be advocating for her. You're going to be, there's no guarantees. There's no crystal balls for either of your daughters.
Sure.
And things will come up down the road. But one of the things that I love to do inside my courses and through my free information, such as this podcast and video blogs, is I really want to empower parents to have their children, whether they're typically developing or have autism. I want each child to reach his or her fullest potential and be as safe as possible, as independent as possible, and as happy as possible. And you mentioned in the beginning that you really, you feel like the course really helped you and your daughter be more happy.
Oh, yes. Our entire household, the atmosphere is completely different. I have incorporated all of these positive, we've incorporated all of these positive strategies, and the entire environment of our household has changed. I don't even know how to explain it correctly. Like, everything used to be tense. We used to be worried about Elena. We used to feel like we were walking on eggshells with her, because she was so moody. She was just, and I didn't know how to help her. I didn't know how to make her happy. And it broke my heart. I was always upset every day, and visibly so, because I want my daughter to be happy and healthy. And the fact that she was always so agitated, it really put a damper on the whole, my husband and I were bickering, because we argued about best strategies for how to help her. My husband was more like, she just has to get over it. She'll be fine. And I said, well, no, because I'm more of a thoughtful, emotionally available person. And I said, I really want her to be happy. And he thought I just spoiled her too much. And really, with autism, I believe a lot of what you said. What really resonated with me about keeping the environment positive is that you said to kind of be like a doting grandmother that's spoiling their grandchildren. Try not to say no unless you have to, or if you have to say no, have an alternative available. And that just really resonated with me. I said, you know what, that makes so much sense, because here I am trying to teach her discipline and tell her that, because my husband said she has to learn no. And I said, can we say no without saying no? Can we provide an alternative? Can we do something to make her react better to this? Because if she's just melting down all the time, she's not going to be happy. She's not going to learn anything. Like you said, if she's just melting down all the time, how can she learn new things? And, in that kind of headspace.
Right. And I give the example, like if a child is after an outlet or constantly trying to go up the steps or down the steps, and you're constantly saying, stop that, stop, don't play with that, don't touch that, don't go upstairs, stay down here, then my thought is get outlet covers, get gates for the bottom of the stairs so that you can stop saying no. Because, that's negative, and everybody needs 5 to 8 positives to every negative. We talked about that on a podcast recently with the hosts of ABA Inside Track. We did a whole podcast on being more positive. We can link that in the show notes, using Glenn Latham's books as well as, his positive parenting book, as well as a book that you could download for free for teachers, Behind the Schoolhouse Door, 8 skills every teacher needs. And really flipping around to being more positive solves 50% of your problems. But when parents are in crisis and they are worried, it's hard to become available to learn that information because so much is going wrong. So it sounds like you and your husband, it's good that your husband pushed a little bit, and it's good that, you got on the same page, and now it sounds like your household is a lot better for going through this.
Absolutely. It's better for both of my girls too. And we're just happy now. We just have so much fun with our daughters, and it's just so wonderful to feel this way and not feel the dread of the future. It does hit me in waves. The diagnosis and the talk of autism and all of it is still new for us, and so we deal with the fear of what she'll be like in the future. We do have fears for Isla, but not nearly. I don't have nearly the fears that I had in the beginning. Before I took your course, I was, I cried every night. I was very emotionally distraught about the whole thing. I just felt helpless and out of control. And as a teacher, I like being in control. I like being able to know what I'm doing. I like having a plan. I like being prepared, and I just felt like I had nothing. And I took your course, and it completely changed how I feel about my children's future. I really feel that no matter what Isla turns out like, no matter what Elena turns out like, I feel like everything is going to be okay. And I have a tremendous amount of hope. My daughter is so bright and so, she's always been smart. She's always been so smart, but now she can show it. She can say it. And nothing makes me happier than hearing her little voice. I never thought I would hear it, and I'll never take it for granted. I cried when she asked me for chips the other day, like a crazy person, because I was just so happy. I never thought she would ask me for things. I never thought she would show me things that she likes, but she points to things. She shows me things. She prefers company over being alone. She's a completely different kid after these strategies that I've implemented from your course. She loves learning. So it's just.
And every time I hear anything like this, it's just so great. I'm so grateful that, I've 5 years ago started my online courses because I wasn't reaching enough people with my strategies. I knew they worked, and going door to door, seeing one child at a time was really not going to get the message out, or traveling to places like Australia or Hawaii and speaking to crowds of 300 people. It really wasn't getting where it needed to get. So through my courses and now through my book, my second book that I'm working on that will be published in April of 2021. I'm going to use your story as one of the many stories of success, which it just makes my heart happy to hear that these strategies are working. And they're not working. Everybody that takes my course doesn't have these, miraculous results, within 6 weeks. And some kids are much more impaired than others. And some parents, it's always good to have people there showing what is possible. Nobody has a crystal ball though. So it's great to hear what is possible and that we are empowering parents to become the captain of the ship, to know, now you're going to know when COVID is over, you are going to know whether you should bring her for a diagnosis. You're going to know whether she needs speech therapy or ABA therapy or in-home or at school or daycare or whatever there's going to be pros and cons, but you are in a much better position to make those kind of decisions for your daughters.
Absolutely. And I think it's so funny that you say that because she, with her speech evaluation, it was through our local school district. And they said she didn't qualify for speech or special ed just last week. So I never, ever thought in a million years that I would ever hear a professional say that my daughter didn't need speech therapy. I was like, I'm sorry, what? They said, yes, she's at a 30-month expressive speech level. And I couldn't believe what they were saying. And I guess I just want to tell parents out there who are unsure about, taking your course or unsure about their child, if they think it's not worth it, if they think their child is too severe. I thought I had a very, very disabled child. I thought she was just going to scream and never speak. I thought she would never point. I thought she would never do any of the things that she's doing now. And no matter how severe you think your child is, there is so much room for improvement, no matter what their capabilities are. And I know that now. My daughter continues to amaze me every single day.
Wow. Yeah. So we need to wrap up, but I just want to also ask you, this podcast is for both parents and professionals, toddlers through, adults. And so part of the goal of my podcast is for each professional and parent to be less stressed and lead happier lives. So do you have any self-care tips or anything that has reduced your stress, especially during the COVID shutdown?
Yeah, the COVID shutdown was very challenging in terms of stress, but I highly recommend just go to bed. Don't stay up all night like I did in the beginning, just researching and researching and researching. You have to take a break. You just go to bed at a reasonable hour. Your kids depend on you. You're not going to be any good to your children if you don't get some rest. And I learned that the hard way. You're much more emotional. It's very difficult. I think, like you said, I forgot where I listened to this from, but it was one of your podcasts, I think, where you said it's very hard for you to think objectively about your situation when you're sleep deprived. And I think that's my biggest self-care tip. Take a nice warm shower, go to bed, and be ready for your kids in the morning. That's my biggest advice. Just treat yourself in some way, especially with sleep.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your success with us, first in the group and then through this podcast interview. I think it's going to help a lot of parents know that there's hope no matter what your situation, and learning more will gain you not only skills to help your child who is affected by autism or other delays, but it's going to help you with your marriage, with your other kids, in your professional life, and it's going to help you to reach your fullest potential as well. So you're a great example to so many parents and professionals out there. So thanks for sharing your story.